Welcome inside room 442. It's Albert Vartanian, Michael Singh, Sarah Pararia, James Sharman. It's a bit strange today. No World Cup games going on. Very strange. We've had so much throughout the weeks, but now it's time to maybe look back at what has happened and what's to come. Mikey, I want to start with you. As it stands right now, what will you remember this World Cup for the most?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think it'll be the anomaly of a World Cup in terms of this is the first World Cup we're seeing in the middle of the year, obviously with everything that went on with Qatar. I'm going to remember it more so for the spectacle overall as opposed to individual moments, I think, in the tournament. But then you think what's to come in Lionel Messi's last World Cup and Cristiano Ronaldo's last World Cup, a turning of the page for so many stars that we've seen grow in our generation. This will be, honestly, a really special World Cup, and it's potentially the last, 32-team World Cup that we're going to see?
You know, it's a shame though, isn't it? They're great points, and it is going to be, from a footballing and storyline standpoint, a great World Cup, but that's going to just mask over the elephant in the room, and that is that this World Cup should never have happened in the first place. There's so many issues regarding the bidding process, the migrant worker deaths, the human rights. So don't put it down. Like, here we are now, approaching the quarterfinals, and I'm just not hearing that much about that side of things, right? It's really important to acknowledge it still. Footballing-wise, brilliant. I wish it was a terrible World Cup footballing-wise, so we could really hammer them. But, it's important, though. We shouldn't forget that.
Sarah, this World Cup being mid-season and having players come in their best form possible, it's made the footballing that much better. Should this format maybe stick going forward?
Absolutely not. And Mikel Arteta and Gabriel Jesus would say no as well. I don't think so. I think footballers, whether they're, they get through this World Cup healthy and they end up continuing to play for their club, I think mentally they're just going to be drained. Like physically they're for sure drained, but if they continue playing, and they manage that, but it's too much football for them. And I think it's also because we're located where we are located in the world geographically, but the World Cup is supposed to be in summertime when it's warm outside. So for me, I still don't really like it. I think the footballers need a break, and I think that it should not be, all right, we're playing with the club, we're 3 months in, we're going to go play a World Cup, the biggest tournament in football, and then we're going to come back and continue playing, jump into, Champions League and just keep going. It's too much.
So is it concerned more about the second half of the club season or about the World Cup itself? Because the players are actually more fresh now than they would be after a complete full season.
Right.
Now, shorter pre-World Cup, of course, we know that. But, I don't like it. I'm with you. But at times it's kind of grown on me a little bit.
Yeah.
It has been good quality football.
You know what the positive of it? We only have 3.5 years to go as opposed to 4 years.
That's
You know
true.
what? I was
Next
thinking
World
that also
Cup.
until the Euros and Copa America
Yeah.
as well. We're all
Exactly.
close to
Can I change my answer quickly?
Go ahead.
It's Canada's first
I
appearance in the
knew
World
it.
Cup
Yeah,
since
I knew it.
1986, right?
No, a big moment. And when it comes to this World Cup being mid-season in the winter, we won't know the effects it's going to have on the players until the end of the season. It could be a poor end to the club season.
Could be an awful Gold Cup, right?
Yeah.
Could be, everyone's knackered, exhausted,
a lot
broken
of
down.
games. It is a ton of games. Is there one moment that stands out for you?
There's been several moments for the underdogs. I think that we have to, Morocco beating Spain yesterday was a huge moment in football for Morocco, and we spoke about this yesterday, but they're kind of the underdog left. So I can't take away from that, but I still think that this World Cup shouldn't have happened, and that's how I will always remember it, unfortunately.
Would that be the case had Spain have won yesterday?
Yeah, because I would hope Messi to win a World Cup,
Yeah,
but
true.
I still don't like that it's happening.
It is.
now.
There's that negative undertone. to it,
Yeah,
isn't
it's
there?
hard to
Yeah.
dismiss it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's that black cloud over the
Yeah,
World
there
Cup.
is.
That the noise is dying down, but it's still there. For me, it's definitely got to be Saudi Arabia beating Argentina. I think I'll never forget that. It's one of those World Cup moments. Where were you when that happened? Next up, James. Biggest disappointment so far, team or player?
Okay, sorry, Sarah, but it's going to be Spain. Just because back at Euro, they were fantastic. They played this progressive new form of tiki-taka. It seemed them in Italy would just set the world alight
Right.
at Euro. They were so good into this tournament. We saw the young kids, Pedri and Gavi, coming through Barcelona ranks, looking even better. They win 7-1 in their first game. We're thinking, oh my God, what is this team doing? The way they pass the ball is incredible. They then played Germany, and they played pretty well in that one, but they let Germany in late. And then they lose to Costa Rica in that in that last group phase. And then in the round of 16, Morocco, and they're just really bad. I mean, that's a team that was up here, I thought, at Euro, and maybe should have won that and got to the final. and now down here. It's just really disappointing. A team that can play such great football, but the way they went out yesterday was faltering.
What about you, Mikey?
Going between two teams here. It's Belgium and Germany. And the reason I'm leaning towards Germany, actually more so than Belgium, which might raise a few eyebrows, is because I think the reaction to Germany going out wasn't as shocking, because that's what we've almost grown to learn or see Germany as. The expectations, I believe, weren't as high this year, and I think that's just a disappointment in its own for a team like Germany, whose expectations, in my opinion, should always be through the roof.
Sarah?
Yeah, I think I'm going to back Mikey on this one and say Germany as well. And also Fabrizio came out and said today that Hansi Flick will be staying in charge of that team until after the Euros, which to me means this team is going to suffer for a little bit more, because I think they're having a lot of issues with, it's a managerial level, the issues that they're having, the people that they're calling up, the lineups that are coming out.
Hazard's retired from Belgium as well.
Yeah.
Today,
Yeah,
so
it's yeah.
Disappointing, honestly. Really disappointing for Belgium. How do you not win anything with that team? Especially when Hazard, at the time, when he was at Chelsea during those years, was arguably one of the best players in the world.
For sure.
Only one world champion in 4 years, though, right? It's a tough tournament to win.
Yeah.
And it's a tiny country. We shouldn't forget that with Belgium. What they, talent-wise, what they can produce is quite amazing for how small that country actually is. So
Right.
I know what you're saying. I wonder if the term golden generation is thrown around too often. Anyway.
It is.
I mean, that was a golden generation, for sure. But it seems any young, good team has now got a golden generation. Like Canada, golden generation. Like, no, it's not. Maybe it will be. We'll find out. But right now, there's two world-class players.
Hey, I
That's
wrote,
not
I
golden
wrote an
generation.
article one day, a couple years back, about Canada's golden
Did you?
generation. So
That
thank
it
you for
was?
that.
Or
That it was.
In comparison to what we used to, it is. But let's not call it a
Of
golden
course.
generation.
No,
though.
I
Just
agree with you. Yeah.
The golden
shiny
Set
generation.
the bar higher. Let's
Yeah,
go.
exactly. I'm going to go with Denmark for personal reasons. I had them win the World Cup. They didn't do it, so screw you, Denmark. Quickly, Ronaldo or Messi? Who is making the headlines more?
Like
And for what
today,
reason?
I'm still going to say Messi from his performances from Argentina, starting the World Cup off so badly. And then he was playing great throughout, scoring the goals as well, leading that team. Without Messi, we discussed before, I think Mikey mentioned it, what are they without Leo Messi? So for me, on the field, it is all about Messi. You know Ronaldo's got noise around him, but he's been relatively quiet this World Cup because he hasn't played that well. Yesterday, the media tried to make something out of stuff, which really wasn't there. He seemed
really
pretty
tried.
He seemed
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
happy to me to be celebrating those goals. And yeah, he left the field early, but come on, I don't think that's that big a deal. So at the moment, it's Messi, but if he blows up in a press conference this week, then it'll be Ronaldo.
Is this Ronaldo business overshadowing what Messi's actually doing on the pitch for Argentina, Sarah?
Do you know what? I kind of think it is. I love that you said Messi, but I think it's Ronaldo. If we're talking about who's making, sorry, the question was more
Yeah,
news.
exactly. Who's taking over the headlines?
It is Ronaldo, because the media, I think, are also playing a major part in it, and that they're so obsessed with him. And you've mentioned this before. He's so polarizing. It doesn't matter whether he's playing football, whether he's on the bench, whether he's at training, whether he's going to sign with Al Nassr. Now, apparently, he's not.
Right.
You know, it's always about him. Messi, we still talk about, when you think about who could be the best player of this tournament, yeah, that's when he comes in. But it's always about Ronaldo, and it's not really for a good reason.
Yeah, it never really is. And it is always about Ronaldo. But coming up in the second block, it won't be about Ronaldo. We're going to be talking about Canada, a new professional women's league in Canada, as well as AJ Alistair Johnson going to Celtic and Ishmael Kone on his way to Watford. That's Ishmael Kone making his move from Montreal to Watford, one of two players who've made a big move to Europe. Mikey Singh, Sarah Pariah, James Sharman, and Albert Vartanian here with you. Mikey, some silver lining for Canada. It was a disappointing World Cup in terms of how they bowed out, obviously. I mean, the expectation was big for them going into this because it was their first one ever and potentially maybe making it out of the group stage. They didn't. They showed some promise, but what happened after the World Cup now is some key players making big moves to Europe, starting with Ishmael Kone going to Watford.
Yeah, when we talk about what effect this World Cup could have on Canada as a football nation, as a country, this is part of that. And it's such a significant step, I believe, for this men's national team and Canadian players overall. They're now getting more exposure on the world stage, and we see Ishmael Coney, we're going to talk about Alistair Johnston, TaJon Buchanan is drawing interest from bigger clubs. The list goes on and on in terms of what that next step is, and it's so important that Canadian men's national team players, they move on and they advance to bigger and better things, bigger and better competitive leagues, right? To raise the level and the bar overall for soccer in Canada as a country. I think it's great news, and I love this move for Kona.
Yeah, so it's a 4.5-year deal with Watford, James. How important is it now for Canada moving forward? We were just talking about golden generations, but how important is it for this golden generation to now find some of their players playing at the biggest clubs?
Yeah, I actually feel really bad for MLS in this time, and I have done for a while because since John Hurban said we need our players playing Tier 1 leagues, top 5 leagues in world football, MLS is looked down upon. It's still a really good league, and it's a great opportunity to develop, certainly, and even have a nice career. We saw Richard Laurier, for example, go to Nottingham Forest, didn't work out, came back and played really well for Toronto, was outstanding at the World Cup. So listen, but let's be honest, the best leagues in the world right now are still in Europe, with respect to South America. So you still want to see young players, I think, blood themselves out there, get moves. But it's interesting seeing Kone, for example, the next big thing in Canadian soccer, wonderful talent, brilliant in Montreal, moving to Watford, really good move for him, but it's still a league championship club. It's not a Premier League club at the moment, right? So I think it's a good reality check for some people as well, to think that it's still a big jump for these young Canadian players to get to that top level. There might be a stepping stone in between, and that's just fine, 100%. I mean, that's a good move. He might go to Udinese as well. That's one of the talk, because the owners of Watford, the Pozzo family, own Udinese. He could be loaned there at some point as well. So these options are fantastic.
In terms of Alistair Johnston going to Celtic, that's a 5-year deal from Montreal as well. How surprised are you that he made this move as early as he did?
Not really surprised. I think we can argue that he was one of the best players for Canada this World Cup, and it's the best move for him at his age. Like James kind of alluded to, that the best clubs are in Europe, and the best leagues. So for him, it's the right move, it's the right time. And I don't think there's any surprise, because now is the time, because it's also about preparing for the World Cup in 4 years. You know, playing that competitive league soccer will also help him prepare for the World Cup in Canada. So I think it's the best thing he could do.
Alistair Johnston, for first in the SPL right now is Celtic in the Scottish Premier League. So there's a chance that he goes there and wins a major trophy in terms of European trophies. Just so everyone knows, Old Firm Derby, January 2nd, which will now be known as the Johnston Arfield Derby.
They're going to love him there, and he'll love that match.
He'll love that atmosphere, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he was saying he'd never experienced the atmosphere like that Morocco game. So going to the Old Firm, be it Ibrox, is that Parkhead or Ibrox? Do you know?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Regardless, doesn't matter. That's a different standard altogether. And he's the kind of player, the way he plays the game, those Scottish fans are going to really embrace him as well. He's feisty.
I love this move. I love this move for Alistair Johnston. He is such a gritty and loves the dirty part of the game, and there's nothing better than going to a team like Celtic to really experience that. And what I'll say about this is this has been a long time coming. It wasn't just the World Cup for Alistair Johnston. He's been really good for the last 2-3 years, and I think it's a well-deserved move for him.
So you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on with Canada's soccer, at least in the men's game for sure. Any other players that you think will be moving anytime soon?
Yeah, I mean, you see the reports out there with TaJon Buchanan. He was the one player that I circled could be the biggest riser in terms of his stock at this World Cup for a Canadian men's national team player. And I think that's the case when you see some of the clubs that he's linked to. Like today I saw Juventus. Yesterday we saw Napoli, Sevilla. He's a guy that I believe massive. And he's a guy that I believe no matter what club he goes to, what league he goes to, he's going to strive, because he's just that type of player. He can embrace the physicality side if he goes to the Premier League. He has the silk and savviness if he goes to La Liga. You know, Serie A, it's kind of a hybrid of both. I think he would thrive no matter which direction.
And that next move for him is important as well, right? In his career, he's come to Club Brugge. He's playing really, really well. The next move's got to be to a top 5 league, with respect to the Belgian league, right? And a big club within those leagues. And I think it's going to be sensational wherever he goes. I mean, Juventus, listen, they're in trouble right now. I'm not sure from a stability standpoint it'd be the best move, but hey, listen, playing at the not the Bianco Neri anymore, but
The Allianz.
the Allianz. That's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be incredible.
But just even being linked to a club like that does so much for a player's stock, right? I mean,
Yeah.
linked to Juventus, one of the biggest clubs. Yeah, they haven't been great now, but they've been one of the
Guys,
biggest clubs
Napoli, top of
in
the
history.
Serie A.
Napoli
Haven't
as
lost,
well,
let's
yeah.
give some credit where it's due.
No, absolutely. Okay, one more big piece of news. Christine Sinclair and Diana Matheson announcing the first Canadian women's professional league in Canada. Sarah, your initial reaction to hearing this?
Honestly, I was so excited, and also I've been waiting for this. As a female growing up in Canada who played soccer at a certain level, it was always a dream, you know, when you're a kid to be a professional footballer. But as a female, it was so much of a far-fetched dream than as, like, you know, my male counterparts who are playing the same game. Because for females, it was very much like, okay, you have to commit to this. Most likely get a scholarship and go to the US and then try and get scouted from there. But now having a homegrown league in Canada, it is going to grow the sport even more so for the players in this country. And I'm so happy that finally, like, the female recognition is really, it's coming out further and further. Female soccer, like the Canadian women's national team was arguably Canada's best sports team maybe ever in anything. And I'm so happy that it's getting its recognition, and that we're going to see so many more young female players coming through the ranks of a Canadian league. It is so important for Canada. It's so important for soccer here, and I'm thrilled. I'm honestly thrilled.
Well, the league kicks off April 2025. 8-team league, James. How significant is this for Canadian soccer?
Well, it's massive. I'm really curious how it works, because Canada Soccer is not involved. MLS isn't involved, although the Whitecaps are one of the first teams to commit to it, and Calgary Foothills. CPL weren't involved, right? So these two legends of the game, you know, Matheson and Sinclair, have great connections, but for them to feel that they must put it on their shoulders and push us forward does tell you that perhaps the support beyond them wasn't there, hasn't been there for a long time. I'm really curious, honestly. CPL is a very new league, fledgling league in this country, still have issues with supporters and getting fans out. Edmonton failed already, and I'm not saying this is going to fail by any stretch, but I'm really curious to see what is the business plan here. But for football in this country, it's fantastic. Like I said, there's a pathway now for these girls, and if they can get 50 or so internationals from overseas, which is the plan, having one international on each team, that's brilliant. The question is, will Sinky be one of them? and if so, who gets her? Because I mean, I suspect she'll play a year. Right, 2025, if that's the year, it's not confirmed, but they're aiming for 2025. She'll still be, I think, able to play at that level to a certain degree. She'll leave Portland. Who gets the great Christine Sinclair, man? That will be a draft to watch.
Yeah, and that's an absolute draw for them as well, which they'll need at the start. Mike, we've seen the success of European women's leagues, NWSL. What does this league need to do to potentially get to that level in, I don't know, 10, 15, maybe even 20 years from now?
Yeah, you know, that's the $1 million question, right? And you know what? There's such a market here, and I wouldn't be surprised if this league goes on and does bigger and better things than the Canadian Premier League, just because I think there's been that hunger and desire to really breed a women's pro league here in Canada. You know how many times I have conversations with little girls and I tell them, hey, yeah, you know, I cover Toronto FC, and they tell me, yeah, you know, I want to play for Toronto FC. Just having that conversation with them is, you know, it's really tough. But now we can say, hey, like, yeah, you know, you can play for a team that's like Toronto FC. There is now pathways for you to move forward here in this country. So I think the appetite's there, and I think this will succeed based on sort of the desire from fans to help it succeed. Because, you know, there is an awareness here that we need to do more in order to help it succeed. I think from the outside looking in, fans understand that they need to go out and support this league, and I really do believe they'll do that.
Isn't there pressure now on TFC in Montreal to join this league as well? Vancouver's done it. They've been talking a big game for a long time, and I know Montreal's hired Amy Walsh to look at the professional side of the women's game, maybe with this in mind at some point, but they got to start making their announcements pretty soon, we're part of this or not, because otherwise NWSL is looking there as well for a franchise, and what does it mean for that? There's so many questions to be answered here.
Yeah, I think it's an absolute no-brainer for teams like TFC, and as you mentioned, to get involved in this and have a team. Why wouldn't you? I mean, this is how it's working across the board, especially in Europe. Barcelona, you know, the Premier Leagues have their own teams as well.
But
and
it takes commitment from ownership, right? Because they will lose money at first, you would think.
Yeah.
The CPL has, right? And that's okay. That's what happens in leagues, right? But you need that stability and that courage and commitment to say, we're going to see this through and build it.
It's an interesting thing because I had a conversation with Toronto FC president Bill Manning earlier this year about the potential of Toronto FC, MLSC going out and getting an NWSL team, and he told me it's something they were going to do. The timeline wasn't really, it wasn't for the next 2-3 years. They were aiming for more so around the World Cup time, and they were going to do it. Now, if that plan now shifts, if that plan now changes, we'll see, because now we have something here that maybe they wanna invest in.
Yeah, and there's a lot to look forward to when it comes to Canadian soccer on the women's side and the men's side. But that's it for this block. Coming up, it's time to make some money with Fast Money Football. Welcome back to Room 442. It's time for Fast Money Football presented by Betano. It's time to look at some golden ball odds and our picks at this point in the tournament to pick it up. And just so everyone knows quickly, the criteria to win the golden ball is this. The winner is chosen by members of the media who vote for a winner from a list of candidates selected by FIFA's technical committee. Who knows what that even means? But based on some past winners, a lot of them haven't been on the team that won the World Cup. Luka Modric, Diego Forlan, and Zinedine Zidane, and just to name a few who didn't win the World Cup but won the Golden Ball. Mikey, who's your pick?
My pick is Bruno Fernandes. Surprise,
you've been on the Bruno train all World Cup.
I have been. I've been doing it, but even prior to the World Cup. Listen, he is, in my opinion, Portugal's most important player. I think we've seen him take the mantle from Cristiano Ronaldo. And when you look at the numbers so far that he's put up, I believe it's 2 goals and 3 assists, which is 5 goal contributions. That's second behind Kylian Mbappe's 7. So he also hasn't even played a match as well. He sat out for 1 match. So I think when you look at the overall body of work, if Portugal can go on and make a deep run, it'll be because of Bruno Fernandes. And for that reason, at 19-1, Bruno Fernandes is my pick to win the Golden Ball.
Peraria.
Good shout, Mikey, but it has to be Lionel Messi. Surprise, surprise. Not one player in this tournament has carried their team single-handedly and score the goals and create space, create chances, assist, create everything. Lionel Messi right now is for sure the best player in this World Cup because of everything he's done for Argentina. Plus 350, you cannot hate that.
James, you on the Messi train?
I am, but I'm not going to because she's on the Messi train, right? Both would be kind of boring, right? And I like the Bruno pick too. I mean, at 19-1, that's ridiculous because right now he probably has been, or arguably, between those two players. I'm going to go for a little dark horse here, Neymar. At 14-1, really good value there, right? And he's the man for the big stage. He's seen his life crushed in previous World Cups in the knockout rounds. He looked pretty good when he came back from the ankle injury last game. He has that moment within him, 1 or 2 games to really bring this World Cup to life for Brazil even more. And I think he's got the potential to have a great, great long run to potentially a World Cup win, in which case I could see him getting it.
Yeah, I love those picks. I'm going to go with Harry Kane. The assists are there. The goals will come, and I expect them to make a deep run into this tournament as they have so far. But that's it for us here inside of Room 442. We'll be back tomorrow to preview the quarterfinal matches of this World Cup. Thanks for watching.